During 1976 and 1977, Carver was hospitalized 4 times for alcoholism. At the same time, his first major collection of stories, Will You Please Be Quiet Please, was released. He and Marianne often lived separately, but they tried to get together again when they were sober.
It's true that Ray and Marianne had decided to get together again after what might be called nightmare scenes on both sides. And since Ray wasn't drinking, maybe they could make a new start here. This is the setting for the Story Chef's house. Ray lived here. The house belonged to the chef at Bella Vista Inn. Ray and Marianne rented it for a few months, and Ray was very productive here.
That summer, Wes rented a furnished house north of Eureka from a recovered alcoholic named Chef. Then he called to ask me to forget what I had going and to move up there and live with him. He said he was on the wagon. I knew about that wagon, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. A week later, he called again and said, "Are you coming?" I said, I was still thinking. He said, "We'll start over." I said, "If I come up there, I want you to do something for me." "Name it," Wes said. I said, "I want you to try to be the Wes I used to know, the old Wes, the Wes I married." He began to cry, but I took it as a sign of his good intentions. So I said, "All right, I'll come up."
When I first read that in the New Yorker, I was almost offended that they could call it fiction. And I thought, all he's done is just write an absolute nonfiction account of what happened there and how we lived, and calls it a short story and publishes it in the New Yorker. But in fact, there are some changes and differences too.
The two people become not exactly Ray and Marianne. The story takes on a life of its own and really transcends the situation that it began from.
In 1977, Raymond Carver and Marianne separated. In 1982, they were divorced, although by her account, they remained in love till the end.
Vodka chased with coffee. Each morning I hang the sign on the door, "Out to lunch." Once my son, that bastard, slipped in and left me a colored egg and walking stick. I think he drank some of my vodka. And last week, my wife dropped by with a can of beef soup and a carton of tears. She drank some of my vodka, too, I think, then left hurriedly in a strange car with a man I'd never seen before. They don't understand. I'm fine, just fine where I am. For any day now, I shall be. I intend to take all the time in this world, consider everything, even miracles, yet remain on guard, ever more careful, more watchful against those who would sin against me, against those who would steal vodka, against those who would do me harm.
I was just into the alcohol itself. I liked the taste of it. But I never from the beginning connected this up with the fact of wanting to be a writer, or the fact that alcohol would help you write. No, I was into the thing itself, and I didn't connect this up with the myth of the writer as the alcoholic.
In 1977, 4 months after he stopped drinking, Raymond Carver met Tess Gallagher, and in 2 years they were living together. They divided their time between Syracuse University, where they both taught, and Gallagher's hometown of Port Angeles, Washington. Ray never touched alcohol again, but kept going back to those earlier days for his stories.
When Ray and I got together, he did begin to write poems again, as well as stories. And he had one wonderful period out here at my Sky House, where I just told him to leave Syracuse because there were too many distractions there. So he did, and he wrote something like 200 poems within a 3 or 4 month period.
I would write a poem, and I didn't know if I had it in me to write another poem the next day or not. I went to bed at night, and the bowl was empty. When I woke up the next morning, it was full again.
A few minutes ago, I stepped onto the deck of the house. From there, I could see and hear the water and everything that's happened to me all these years. It was hot and still. The tide was out. No birds sang. As I leaned against the railing, a cobweb touched my forehead. It caught in my hair. No one can blame me that I turned and went inside. There was no wind. The sea was dead calm. I hung the cobweb from the lampshade, where I watch it shudder now and then when my breath touches it, a fine thread, intricate. Before long, before anyone realizes, I'll be gone from here.
He allows his speaking voice to come to the fore a little more in his poetry. So the voice is much warmer, much more immediate, but they're very artfully wrought, those poems. But he needed to write poems. He thought of himself as much as a poet, every bit as much as he did as a short story writer.
I love creeks and the music they make, and rills in glades and meadows before they have a chance to become creeks. I may even love them best of all for their secrecy. I almost forgot to say something about the source. Can anything be more wonderful than a spring? But the big streams have my heart too, and the places streams flow into rivers, the open mouths of rivers where they join the sea, the places where water comes together with other water. Those places stand out in my mind like holy places. I'm 45 years old today. Would anyone believe it if I said I was once 35? My heart empty and sere at 35. 5 more years had to pass before it began to flow again. I'll take all the time I please this afternoon before leaving my place alongside this river. It pleases me, loving rivers, loving them all the way back to their source, loving everything that increases me.
Ray got very much attached to the idea of being outdoors, of being in nature more than he had. He had been a creature of rooms up until that point. I think that this united him, the life in the Northwest united him with his childhood when he had gone out fishing with his father.
I think rivers in general were a source of mystery, and they were also kind of spirit signs in that you didn't know what was down there in the darkness of the river.
The river. I waded, deepening into the dark water, evening in the push and swirl of the river as it closed around my legs and held on. Gravel turned under my boots as I edged out, watched by the furious eyes of king salmon. They were there. I felt them there, and my skin prickled. But there was something else. I braced with the wind on my neck, felt a hair rise as something touched my boot, grew afraid at what I couldn't see, then of everything that filled my eyes, that other shore heavy with branches, and this river that had suddenly grown black and swift. I drew breath and cast anyway, prayed nothing would strike.